Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. And this may be a long video. I just want to go over things I've done to this bike since 2011. This is a 2000 Harley Davidson 1200 Sportster. And every time I do a video, the train wants to arrive. Anyway, so I'm going to go over this thing. I guess I'll start at the front. And so I upgraded to a LED light, and I think everyone that knows upgrading to an LED is going to be a pretty nice upgrade. So I'm going to turn her on here, and that's what she looks like. And the thing sitting on top of there, that's a vacuum tube, which stopped working. So I decided to, well, I'll just make it part of the motorcycle. So it is now the high beam indicator light, which you would normally see right here in that display. But what I did was I'll have to talk about this now. So I did the speedometer relocation, okay, and that speedometer relocation bracket, you can get those on eBay and some other online companies, okay. And so normally it's going to show your turn signal. Now that right there, that is that little red LED, that's the brake light switch, or the brake light LED. So I incorporated both the front and rear brake light, so when I press the lever, she lights up. And so you can see the neutral light glowing really bright. And you would usually see, or normally see, the oil temperature light, which I don't have anymore because I run an oil pressure gauge. And so that oil pressure gauge hose will connect to the oil pressure sensor switch. And anyone that runs an oil pressure gauge, well, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so instead of the high beam light indicator being down here, it is now this vacuum tube. And I'm going to show you. So when that, here, let me see if I can get a picture of the light. So when it goes to high beam, you can see the little blue LED lights up in the vacuum tube. Oh, well, that's the number 47 button. So anyway, so that's low beam, high beam. And so also upgraded to some LED turn signals. These here, they start out as running lights until you need your turn signal, and they will turn to amber once they're activated. And so coming down to the forks, so I put a fork brace on here, and it really stiffens up the front end of the bike. However, when you buy these, they may not always fit the way they're supposed to, and you may need to do a little come in here and do a little bit of grinding to take out some metal so that it fits over your fork legs, okay, without binding. And another thing, now the 1200 Sportster Custom comes with a 21-inch wheel, and I went with a 19-inch wheel, which gives it a little fatter tire look, kind of that bobber look. And I also went with some wave rotors, and they were not a lot of money. They were only like 97 bucks for those wave rotors. And I also got some axle nut covers, and I replaced the Brembo 4-piston front brake caliper with a Hog Halters 6-piston brake caliper. There was actually nothing wrong with the Brembos. I knew I wanted to replace them as soon as the pads wore out, which they did, and I replaced them with these here. Now, I were going to go with some performance machine calipers, 4-piston, but they were like, what? I paid $367 for these. The performance machine 4-piston caliper were about $100 more, you know. So I saved about $100 and got 6-piston calipers. And then I went and had to put titanium caliper bolts in there for even a better look. And so going back over here to the oil cooler. Now this bike came from Illinois. I'm in Washington State, so you probably won't need one for an Evolution Motors, because Evolution Motors aren't, noted for running hot. And it really doesn't get hot in Washington State. But this oil cooler was on the bike before I came here. And, if you really want to get a oil cooler for your Harley, this oil cooler came from my Ducati. Well, when I bought my Ducati, this was the spare oil cooler. Okay, and it cools really well. Actually, a little too well for this bike. Now, if you run a twin cam or a Milwaukee 8, I would say instead of spending $200, $300, and $400 for one of those oil coolers, $59 for this used one here, and this thing cools great. And plus, it has if you can see it right there, it has a drain plug, so you don't have to disconnect, your oil lines to get the oil out of this thing. And because this one, I put a fan on it too, because when it's 80 or 85 degrees here in Washington State, which is very rare, if I'm in heavy traffic, then I'll turn on that fan, and here, I'll do it here, right? And it's okay, so there she goes. And this is the switch for the fan. And yes, that is a 40 caliber bullet casing for the switch cover. And so another thing, so I'm running an oil pressure gauge and a temperature gauge on this oil cooler. Not that it's needed, but that's just me wanting to know what everything is doing. Okay, so oil comes out of this line here going into the oil cooler. And so that temperature gauge is going to be the oil coming from the engine, that temperature. And then it comes up through the cooler, and that's the oil pressure coming out of the cooler. And in this line here, that goes to the oil tank. And actually, I'll just go over there and show you what's going on there. So I have a dipstick that has a temperature gauge on it, and I went one better. There's some companies out there now that have a magnetic dipstick. What I did, I just took if I can get her off here, I just took a magnet, okay, and I put a magnet and a little bit of a wire and connected it to my dipstick, as you can see here. And it does exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. And they get about I think they're like $130, for those magnetic dipstick. You can make your own, okay? Go down to a hardware store, grab yourself a little neodyme magnet, and that was a paper clip that I used, and you can make your own. Okay, I mean, it didn't cost me $5. All right, now the oil temperature gauge, that alone, I think that was like $30. But hey, you're saving yourself over $100. Doing it that way. Okay, so I'm gonna go back around here, and if you've been on my channel, then you know about the vintage spark plug wires that I did. Okay, because I already had these wires. I just took the ends off and put some copper terminals on them, and a copper, no, those aren't copper, these are brass wing nuts. And I finished it off, got some spark plug cooling fins. I don't think spark plugs need, to be cool, but I like the look. And of course the head bolt covers. Now those came from my local hardware store, and they are flared brass end caps. Okay, and 4 of these things cost me about what, maybe $14. And then I bought already had the 832 tap, so I bought a drill and some set screws, and all I did was drill and tap those end caps, and now I've got $16 head bolt covers, which will probably cost you anywhere from $30 to $50 on eBay or any other online company. And what I did here, that's my horn cover, which used to be, well, it's a velocity stack. Now I ordered 2 of these from my Ducati, and they sent 3, so I just used this one as a horn cover for this little cheap horn. Okay, and that switch there, well, I'll explain that later. But anyway, and so going up here to the gas tank, I went with a larger petcock. This one's a 3/8 petcock, and if you buy one of these types that has that lever here, beware, because when this lever comes over here, you can see here, it's gonna hit the motor mount. So what I had to do was I had to grind off a little part of the end of it so that it can go all the way around here, because on the back side is the reserve, because this is on, there's off, and on the back side there is reserve. So in order to get to it, you're gonna have to grind off that little piece of knob there. Okay, and so, before I forget, now I changed out my rear caliper, which nothing was wrong with it, but I always knew I wanted to do it, to a performance machine caliper. And I also went ahead and got titanium caliper bolts. And the carrier, what is that? That is a billet-proof caliper bracket. And when you use this type, you're gonna have to do a little welding, because you're gonna have to weld a tab for the brake stay on. Okay, and so that's working out really well. And I got some of these RFY shocks. They're really cheap shocks. If you want that, piggyback shock split, they're like 99 bucks. The shock springs are a little too weak. I'm about what, 165, something like that. If you're if you're tipping the scales at 180 to 200 pounds, you don't want a passenger, because it's just gonna bottom these shocks. Okay, and I got the trucker girl, and well, if you've seen my channel, you know all about the these quartz crystal turn signals, and these are bus fuses. And if these bus fuses were to blow or break, the turn signals won't work. And so coming around to the other side, yeah, there's my piston brake light. And I can't remember what car this piston came from, but it even has the connecting rod, but I covered it with that piece of leather there. And then I put my little logo on there, Star Customs. I think I got autofocus on. There we go. All right, now we can see it. And so, coming back around to this side, I went ahead and drilled some holes in my belt cover, which I may take this belt cover off a little later and paint it black, because I like how it looks in black. I seen a Sportster that had a black one, and I like the black more than the chrome. And so that is, now this little can here, that's the crank, the primary case vent. And the one behind it, that's for the crankcase breather. And I did my little hose. I had to bend these. And I had to actually learn how to, make these little twists in there. It took me like 2 or 3 tries before I got it right. But anyway, it comes down into this little canister, and then it comes here and it vents. I ran the vent behind the belt there. And next, there's some more bullet casing covers. This one's for the oil pressure LED light. Oh, there we go. And that one for the, I even put a LED behind my glass fuel filter. It all looks pretty nice at night. And I even put some LEDs in my velocity stacks. Where's that switch at? Yeah, there's that switch. Okay, there we go. Now, this setup, I really like this setup. This was a Kuryakin cone air filter. That's how it came. And if you know anything about the Kuryakin cone air filter, they point forward, But I machined a little bracket in there, an adapter, to point it upwards like this. Kind of give it that, that Weber carb look. And so what I had to do is I had to make this base here. I just made it out of some copper. Okay. And I made this plate, if you can read that. If you can't, it says no traction control, no ride modes, just down with the sickness. And a bike shop down in Arlington, they did the fuel gauge for me. And that's all working out pretty nice. And then I've got the combination 12 voltmeter and RPM gauge. And what else? Oh yeah, and the pipes. So, oh yeah, before I forget, I even put an LED inside the rear brake master cylinder, and as you can see here, people ask me, what is that? And well, it's just a LED, illuminating the little sight window, which you really can't see your fluid in it anyway. But, well, now it's got an LED behind it, and I think that's pretty cool. And this, the carburetor, well, that's a Mikuni HSR 42 clone. It's a Chinese clone of a Mikuni. And in spite of what some people say, this thing is working out really well for me. And so all I did was took off the CV card and ran the same jets, because this thing runs a 180 main, and I think it's a number 32 pilot jet. And the pipes, well, the pipes I had made in a shop in Indonesia. And there's a couple of companies here in the U.S. that make some really nice pipes. Kinetic Cycle is another. I checked their website, and they have some really nice pipes you can buy for Sportsters and Harley Davidson. But I only pay $5.50 for these here. He normally sells these for around $7.50, and so I got a few extra accessories with mine, and so he lowered the price about $150 because of Trump's tariffs. Okay, it took me about a month to get these, and then once I got them, I burnt my leg on this pipe here, and so I made my own heat shields out of brass, and they look pretty nice. And then I drilled some holes in them, and when the bike's running, you could actually put your hands on these, and you're not going to get burned. They're warm, but they're not really hot. Okay, and I did the same thing for the lower part of the pipes. And oh yeah, now this bike also runs a electronic ignition, and what's cool about it is that I put a Lexan cover on it so you can see the LEDs as the it's a Dynatec 2000i electronic ignition. And maybe I could just turn it on and let you see it. Maybe make sure this thing's in neutral first. Yeah, it's in neutral.